You can't have a strong league without a strong PA, and you can't have a strong PA without a strong league.
As you and I know very well, no startup comes without growing pains. I think last episode we talked about and touched upon some of the obstacles that the National Women's Soccer League has faced since forming in 2012 and kicking off its inaugural campaign. But here we are today to try to understand how they get out of this growing pains and what are some of the important achievements that players brought to the league for it to survive.
Yeah, exactly. The league has come a long way. And, again, NFL, MLS, all these other leagues have been around a lot longer. So for the NWSL coming off of not one, but two failed prior iterations of professional women's soccer in the US, like you said, there are growing pains. And it's kind of wild to think that the NWSL Players Association wasn't formed until May 2017. 5 years, I had to try to do the math there, 4 years from the start of the league's actual, inaugural season, but it's grown by leaps and bounds since.
I was in school with someone who was very influential in this process, NWSLPA's former executive director, Brooke Elby, and I'm so proud and so happy to invite her in today's show. Her battle in creating what they have today in the league and more in this week's episode of Finance of Football. I'm the athletics women's soccer reporter, Asli Pellet.
And I'm veteran sports journalist, Michael Array.
Welcome to Finance of Football.
Welcome back to Finance of Football. This week, we're joined by Brooke Elby, whose pro career has spanned across the globe from Australia to America. She also served as co-executive director of the NWSL Players Association and currently works as a manager at McKinsey & Company. Hi, Brooke. Welcome to the show.
Hey, it's great to be here.
So much has happened since you and I were in business school. By the way, shout out to Lions. But when we graduated in 2022, NWSL was in a place where there were still doubts about where is it going. Can you please start off a little bit when you wanted to get involved after your professional career ended as a player? How do you wanted to get involved in the league? Why do you wanted to get involved? And how it was created, the PA, and why its formation perhaps was really so significant for the growth of soccer in the US, as well as the growth of the league as a stable financial investment opportunity.
Wow, so many questions in there. But I think just quite bluntly, like any new league, very startup vibes. And so kind of what happens in that situation are there going to be like a ton of growing pains. And so I think that's what we saw initially in the first, even 3 to 7 years of the league. It was, is this league going to outlast the other two? And if it does, how is it going to actually adapt and change to make sure their players are at the forefront? They're taking commercial opportunities and risks that they had never done before. They're looking to grow this game, even globally and on a global scale. So what does that all look like for this league? And I think, as anyone would see, there was a lot of struggles early on. And so my involvement with the PA actually came before I was even planning on retiring. It was actually at the precipice of me planning on retiring because of all the struggles we were going through in the league. And, as somebody who loved the idea of maybe one day starting my own business or going to do something in the business of sports side, I was kind of at this inflection point of, do I continue my career? Do I, start this PA, really get it going while still a player, so I get to see it from that player perspective, but continue to grow it? Or do I just leave entirely? So I picked option B. So that's where Yael and I had a long conversation about what does this actually even look like? If this is something we're going to build, what are we planning to do? And what is it going to do for the players around us? And so somebody once told me this in like the first couple of months that we were trying to get this all off the ground. was you can't have a strong league without a strong PA, and you can't have a strong PA without a strong league. And that was the moment it hit because we were a league with no PA. There was no way to galvanize all of the players. There was no way to collectively bargain. There was no way to even voice your opinions or stripes if you needed to anywhere. But I don't even think the league really had an HR department. So we kind of played this role of let's just get this going first because we know the league needs it.
Mhm.
And the more confidence the players get that there is a voice that will act for them, I think the more confidence they will have in this league.
You touched on it a little bit, obviously, just the growing pains and everything involved with establishing a league and a players association. What were some of those kind of maybe initial sticking points as you were forming the PA here? Because I know, there needed to be a lot of rules and regulations and different things in place from a league standpoint, but especially from that player representation standpoint. And we've seen, obviously the national team, the fight for equal pay and treatment and resources. So were those things even on your mind at that point for, and the NWSL when the PA launched, or it was like, we just have to get kind of a well-oiled machine up and running here first?
I think it was a little bit of both. So I think there's a lot of practicality when you think of starting a business or a PA or anything like this, especially as you think about unions. You, like I said, like you're only like the stronger your PA, the stronger the league, vice versa. But in reality, the league was still at such an infancy stage that you couldn't go in asking for everything. And the hard part was you were constantly being compared to the US women's national team, where your equal across the two were far different. And so I think that was a lens you had to take thinking about this is we could sure go in and ask, hey, this is the minimum salary I want for all of our players, but the league's not going to be able to afford that. And you don't want to bankrupt your league because then your PA means nothing if there's no league to play for. So you really have to go in with the idea that, hey, we need to make sure that our players are being treated with the utmost respect and fairness as possible, but also doing so within the limitations of currently where the league is at, in kind of what it's building. So I think that was initially just how we viewed it. But there was also just a ton that was not acceptable from a league perspective that as a players association, that was our first and foremost goals. And one of those was contracts weren't even guaranteed. So
Wow.
you could be waived at any point and not have a job. And that sense that like lack of security for somebody who just picked up and moved their life to a different city, potentially a different country, was just not going to be sustainable in talent capture from other leagues, wasn't going to be sustainable for your players' livelihoods. Like, can you imagine like working at your job now and no severance, no nothing? You just like tomorrow you pack your bags and go home. Same with the idea of getting traded. I can speak from experience that you get like 24 hours to pack your bags, move somewhere else. You may have no friends, no family, no nothing around there. And you didn't have the financial advantage that, like, if an NFL player gets traded, that's okay. He's got millions of dollars saved up to go
Mhm.
do this. We were operating sub $20,000 paychecks and being asked to uproot our lives and change our lives at the drop of a hat. And so I think our first and foremost was security for the players. And part of that is in ensuring we get a minimum contract size that's actually feasible for a livelihood. And then creating a structure where like contracts were guaranteed for the players. A lot of people didn't come back from having children because it just wasn't sustainable
Mhm.
financially, and also just the league didn't support it in the way they should have then, but do now. And so I think it was just things you thought would have been a given were not.
And then there's a new CBA that is announced in 2024. Do you think it was a fair deal?
Yeah. I think truly like Megan Burke at the PA and all of the members of the PA did such an amazing job with this CBA. I think they, really pushed forward this idea of free agency and making sure players have a say in where they get to go. And that's the disbanding of the draft. That's allowing like players to kind of pave their own path. Because I think that was a huge inhibitor as you think about talent attraction. Because I think when we think about the WSL and Liga F and all of these other leagues, players with like top talent, players don't want to come over to a league where you could think you're signing with, Angel City, but get traded to another team the next day. I think where I would love to see them push further is like revenue share. Because I
Mm,
think that is like a piece that, especially when looking at the NFLPA and the MLBPA, what they've done with their rev share programs, even creating their own like inks out of it, specifically for their players has been so cool. And it's how you drive the revenue from a player association side, which you can then feed back to your players as additional income is like a huge opportunity. I think that the league itself needs a little bit more commercial stability before that fully takes off. But I think that could be like a really cool place to push in the future. How do you make this league a league that's really going to turn the tide of women's sports and revenue generation and investors coming into this side of the sport?
but like you said, without revenue growing, sharing would be not so easy, obviously. I don't
Exactly.
know how long it took like MLB or NBA to get to that point, but I think latest valuations from Sportico that was released a week ago shows an incredible growth in that sense that perhaps not every club is where they need to be, but hope is that, in the next five, I would say, a year, we would see revenue of the league overall growing and then revenue sharing coming into picture at 2030 when they're negotiating again, I would say.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because, like, as exciting as those valuations are of all of these teams, I think they were saying every team's close to 200 million. I would like to see revenues also growing in tandem with those valuations because I think right now they're escalating at such a quick pace. The
Mm-hmm.
money's not talking the same way. And to make that a viable business for investors, I do think that's a change that needs to happen.
Brooke, you obviously mentioned a lot of the positives from the current CBA that goes until 2030. And what role would you say that the PA plays in not only attracting but retaining talent to the league? Asla and I have spoken in prior episodes about this arms race between the NWSL and the WSL for top talent. We've obviously seen players, go across both sides of the pond here, but knowing that the CBA is a big part of the players' rights, and you mentioned potential rev share and things like that maybe in the future. How much does that incentivize or motivate a player to want to stay in this league or to come from a different league to the NWSL, knowing that hey, the opportunities here might be better, off the field based on the things the PA has negotiated on my behalf.
Yeah, I think that PA has a huge role in it, particularly because they get to hear firsthand what players need. So I think the league a lot of the time is guessing how they think they can attract talent, whereas the PA can hear it, from players either coming into the league or leaving the league. And I think that was how, even when we were initially starting out, one of the best why it was so great that it was founded purely by the players is because we knew exactly what the issues were. But I think as we think about all these other leagues globally growing, the NWSL is uniquely positioned because there's a lot of money that has been flooded into this league as of late. And you see just even with transfer fees, like the opportunity with what this league can offer is huge. I just think there's some particular pieces that, and it's mostly around parity that slightly stifle the league. And so what's tough, and I will never say that I want to be in the commissioner's shoes when making this decision, but you have to like balance parity with ensuring you can provide, the most competitive salaries or the most competitive opportunities for players. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to silo top paid like players causing, the potential of what we see in some of these other leagues like the WSL, Frauen Bundesliga, all of these leagues where you see amazing teams at the top and then there's a huge drop off of talent and even just competition from the like second half of the league. And
Mm-hmm.
so what you don't want to do is like create that environment because the NWSL is so fun. the bottom of the table could beat the top of the table on any given day.
Yeah.
Um,
Chaotic, as they
yes,
say.
it's very chaotic, but it's the
In a good
excitement,
way.
and and you kind of have to have that in American sports because you don't have promotion relegation. So why this has become so important is now you have to balance that parity game with ensuring you can offer a salary that a player is going to leave her hometown for. Because the other piece to the way American sports and especially soccer works is we don't really have homegrown or academy systems that fully feed into your clubs right now. So you've
Mhm.
got players who are like playing in the UK, they're playing for the team that they grew up playing for or watching or just being integrated into their life for so long. There's that history to it. That's a little less so in the NWSL. So you have to make it so attractive with all of these additional pieces to get them to leave that environment and come all the way over here.
I have one quick question. When you said you don't want to be in the commissioner's shoes, also her job is make sure the investors keep, their interest in investing in the league, keeping owners happy, keeping players happy. And one of that comes from the salary question. If you cut bigger checks for salaries, that can spook investors to say this is a league that is not really generating revenue. If we keep paying a lot of dollar, money for the players, which is necessary to make an interesting league, right? Stars bring audiences and sponsors. Um, I kind of want to ask you from where you sit today as a consultant, um, what is your take on all this?
I think it's a great question for my consulting hat because it's all about like strategy. Because I think the way you've described it even is how a lot of people think about it, which almost feels not binary because there's so many different factors, but it's like an either or situation where the way it should be viewed is the more you're investing into the club in general. That means how you market the club, the live event experience, the real estate is going to build into this whole storyline that would hopefully bolster the revenues of your team, allowing you to write those larger checks. And the tough part about the way the NWSL works and a single entity system is that decision isn't going to be made in a silo for one team. So if one team, like a Kansas City who builds their own women's only facility and stadium, just because they say bring in a ton of revenue a year doesn't mean all of a sudden they can write bigger checks for their players. So what you have to do is, a rising tide raises all ships. Like we need to make sure.
Michael loves that.
It's one of my
But
favorites.
like,
Yeah.
it's really true, especially in the NWSL and the MLS, because you need to be able to make sure that just because, 9 out of 14 teams are killing it on the rep side, if these other teams aren't able to keep up, the salaries are always going to be stifled mostly by that lowest tier team. And
Mhm.
so for me, it's about how do you best sell your club, the product, the event, all of it, because that's what, fans are craving. You do that, that's what's going to drive your revenue. Sure, stars do drive your revenue, but it's also the content you create around those stars and the storylines you've built. And there's so much that goes into it that I don't want it to feel like, as an investor, I'm scared because of look at all these checks they're writing. It's like, as an investor, here's this opportunity. I can elevate all these players, potentially get them sponsorships. Maybe you don't have to write a bigger check if you can get them money in other mechanisms. Like, I think there's just people have to look at this as a amazing opportunity and a full picture. Because if they see it like that, I don't think anything would spook them. I think this would excite them.
Yeah, I say it every episode we talk about women's soccer in the NWSL. If I had money, I would invest in the NWSL. So whoever's listening, if they want to cut me a check, I can then bring it to one of the clubs. Um,
This turns into like a GoFundMe for the team we're gonna
Yeah.
buy.
I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. That's great.
We're
Where should we
definitely
take it?
bringing
Somewhere
you in,
warm.
Brooke.
Only if I get naming rights of the club.
Oh, okay.
You got it.
For the right amount. Yeah, I think we can make something happen there.
Deal.
We're gonna take a quick break. Stay with us as Finance of Football returns after this. You talked about stars. Asa brought it up. You brought it up as well too, right? It's maintaining current stars. It's creating new stars, and one of the more significant changes to come out of the league recently, through the new CBA is the high impact player rule, which some folks call the Rodman rule, right? Trinity, she was gonna leave, and then they were like, actually, let's make an exception here. The PA spoke out about this. They called it a unilateral action. Is the PA justified in this response? Is this a good thing for the NWSL? Is it a good thing for the players? How do we kind of move forward here, knowing that this probably won't be the only time that the league will be in a situation like this?
Yeah. I have a lot of thoughts on this, but
We got
the
time.
best way yeah, we don't even have enough time for this, but the best way to frame it is, look, the league did make a unilateral decision. They should always be bargaining in good faith with the PA. And so I think that was a real miss on their part. No matter the intention behind it, that's not how this league works. And you're going to get a situation where like the PA needs to speak out when things are done incorrectly, and they did this incorrectly. Now, do I think it is a horrible thing? No. I actually think this is pretty directionally correct. I think it was very poorly designed. So, I think I don't even want to call it positives and negatives, but there was like they are looking to push the league further. And that should always excite people. They are trying to attract top talent. And right now, top salaries in the NWSL are not competing with top salaries in other leagues. As you mentioned, the WSL being one of them. That's how we lost talent like Sam Kerr. That's just, it is what we've seen in the past that the NWSL needs to react to. I think what really is the kind of crux here of all of this is you have to make something in tandem with your players association, because the more you work together, the better that like I said, it's poorly designed, the better the design is going to inevitably be. And I think one of the biggest, issues I'll take with this is the qualifications that they set for who is a high impact player. It makes the league feel very divisive, players against players, of how you fit into these subcategories that somebody made up without consulting the Players Association about. Now, overarchingly, and I think I actually heard like Landon Donovan talk about this on a podcast, but the MLS did a very similar thing when David Beckham came into the league. And
Mhm.
that was huge for the league. So that's why I think in premise, this is a good idea. I do think being able to attract that top talent and get the salaries players deserve to get them to come. But I also think some of that needs to be looked at from a larger perspective of maybe the salary cap needs to be raised then. Maybe there are other options. Maybe there's, maybe talking to your PA would actually help you come up with a better plan. But I do think there was good intent, poor execution. And I know they were trying to be reactive. I know it was a really like shortened time frame, making sure you sign Trinity, keep her at the Spirit, and figure out a way to retain already the top talent, and then we'll think about bringing more talent in. But I really think, regardless of time constraints, you've got to keep everybody who needs to be in the conversation, regardless if I think in like the long term, it actually is a pretty good strategic play. It just needs to be executed better.
It's not like they didn't know her contract was gonna expire, right? Like, that's kinda my thought is it's not like, yesterday she's like, "Oh, yeah, I'm gonna leave the team." It's like she was out of contract, right? She even got called up to the national team and wasn't tied to a
Yeah.
club, and it's just like, "Oh, yeah," now they were like, "Oh, we have to hurry up and figure this out." So it's like it's something that they could have been working on, and I agree with you. I think it shouldn't be a us as a league versus them as the players. It needs to be a joint decision, and then now they kinda have to pick up the pieces and come out with that unified messaging together as
Yeah.
opposed to, what they initially did, which, like you said, not the best execution.
Yeah. It's kind of like one of those, ask for forgiveness later, except for this is not one of those situations they should have taken that chance. So I think they're paying for it a little bit. But I think it will be interesting to see if that has, a tremendous impact on, kind of talent pull into this league.
It must be very interesting to sit from your sitting, looking at everything is unfolding. You told me once from the time that you were playing where you guys didn't have even changing rooms and, lockers, everything was a mess. Like you said, you had to pick up your shit and move overnight without knowing what's going to happen to you in next, month or so. Where we are today, I think gives a lot of people hope. Michael and I talked about it last episode. It's going to be a very important season for the league.
This is a huge inflection point for women's sports. And not only is it exciting to see, like, I think the funny thing about all of this, like you said, like from wearing different hats, like there's still the little girl inside me who's like, holy crap, somebody's getting paid $1 million to play the sport that I was getting paid like pennies to do. Like, that's just so cool. Because from the girl who like was hoping she could afford Chipotle after practice to like, wow, like people are paying thousands of dollars to go to some of these home openers and just like I want to pay thousands of dollars to go to them because it's just such an amazing thing to see.
Big thanks to Brooke for joining us. When we come back, we take a look at the biggest stories surrounding the 2026 FIFA World Cup, including a proposed 25-hour road trip in order to fly from the Middle East to Mexico due to the ongoing war. We'll be right back.
According to The Guardian, Iraq is requesting its World Cup intercontinental playoff match against the winner of Bolivia and Suriname on March 31st in Mexico be postponed to accommodate travel complications as a result of the U.S. war in the Middle East. With the country's airspace closed for the duration of the war, Iraq is trying to figure out how to get its players and staff to Mexico while dealing with extensive travel that honestly, could negatively impact the country's performance on the field with a World Cup berth at place. I get why they're upset. So FIFA recommended basically that players and staff embark on a 25-hour road trip to Turkey,
Turkey. I was
Turkey.
going to say, they can just drive to our country and then take a flight.
Exactly. So 25-hour road journey from Iraq to Turkey and then fly to Mexico. So listen, no one wants to do that. You don't want to do that going on vacation. You don't want to do that with a World Cup berth up for grabs as well. At the time of this recording, approximately half of the squad is based in Baghdad and unable to travel, while head coach Graham Arnold, an Australian, is stuck in Dubai. So, not only that, but many of the players and staff are still awaiting visas for the US and Mexico. So the war is obviously causing lots of issues, and sports is certainly being affected by it as well too. And then obviously with the potential for Iran withdrawing from the World Cup, Iraq would be that next replacement based on qualifications and rankings and all of those things. So now we're looking at issues with potentially two of the nations that are going to be participating in this summer's tournament as a result of the U.S. war in Iran. So stay tuned to see what happens.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll see many, many more stories around travel if the war continues. Talking about battles and wars, there's a brewing battle of words between the town of Foxborough and the Kraft Group as the delay in 7.8 million of security funding remains at standstill with less than 100 days to go until the kickoff of the World Cup. A Kraft Group spokesperson released a statement saying they met with Foxborough representatives about their concerns and remain committed, quote, committed to financially ensuring the town's needs are met for security-related costs, end quote. But town reps responded shortly thereafter, saying that any statement that a funding agreement had been reached was categorically false, end quote. The organizations have said that they will reimburse the town or that the equipment they need for security will be available by June 1st. So it's going to be an interesting who's going to give up or chicken or the egg story, I think, in this town. And I totally understand why the town representatives do not want to upfront, the $7.8 million. It's a huge amount, and they probably will receive a backlash from the town or from the county if they do such thing with public funds without having security of getting it back.
Yeah. Listen, I'll loan somebody $20, but 7.8 million is a little is a little expensive. So you get the apprehension for Foxborough to sit here and shell out that cost, knowing there's a chance we might not see this, or if we do, it's years and years out. And like you said, that's money that they can take and put towards other things that isn't this, month long sporting extravaganza. So I understand that they have other priorities, and rightfully so. They're standing, firm. They drew a line in the sand and they said, you guys need to give us this money, and then we will grant this, this entertainment license. And until then, it's not going to happen. So will the World Cup be played in Foxborough? At this point, it's up in the air. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see if something changes. If I'm not mistaken, I think there's a friendly match, a World Cup friendly match that's going to be happening at Gillette Stadium later in March. That may be kind of the deadline for that money to kind of come through. But we've seen lots of issues with other host cities, and this funding, especially for security, especially given everything going on in the world. I think we need to use as much security as possible. So I get the concerns. So yeah, still not a good look. Less than 100 days until the World Cup. Still not looking too good. Finance of Football comes to you from the Frequency Machine Podcast Network. Hit us up on Instagram and YouTube at Finance of Football Pod for more football business and our enlightened opinions. Or search Finance of Football on LinkedIn and Facebook. This episode was produced by co-hosts Michael Array and Asa Pellet. It was edited by Ryan Hammond. Mixing and mastering by Julian Kwasniewski. Our theme music is by Hatamitsunami. Our show is executive produced by Ryan, alongside Stacy Book and Avi Glajansky for Frequency Machine. Find more about Finance of Football at frequencymachine.com. Follow us on YouTube at Finance of Football, and listen anywhere you get podcasts. Please like and subscribe. Help us reach more people. We love you for it.